So I got this question the other day and I started typing up a response, but it ended up being a really long response. So I decided it would probably just be a better video than a typed response. So here's the question. Can I get your opinion on how many acres you think a person can handle? It seems as though the properties that I can afford actually have higher acreage than I even considered. So the first thing that kind of like comes to my mind is what type of property are you looking at? Because I know when we were looking at property in Tennessee, some of the property that was like 25 acres, we went to go look at it and like 90% of it was on a mountain. So it was just like a steep slope, and really it was unusable. It was really pretty, but they were basically selling like the entire mountain. So it came up to really high acreage, but it wasn't really very much usable acreage. So I would just really make sure, um, go visit and see what type of land it is that you're looking at, because also factor in like flooding if it's in a flood zone. I know if you get on like Redfin and Zillow, they have like a flood zone map, and it'll let you know if the property generally is in a flood zone or not, and then like other natural disasters in the area. Also consider, if there's any water or utility hookups or the availability for those things. Can you drill a well? Is there well water available? How much is the going rate for a well in that area? Is the water table like super deep, or are you going to have issues with that in the future? And that's why the land seems to be less expensive. But that might not even be the case. Maybe you're looking in a different location than you're currently living in and are shocked at how cheap the prices are in certain areas, because there are still areas that are very affordable when it comes to land. And it's just because it's really rural and nobody lives there, not because there's anything wrong with it. Unless you need a lot of socialization and you don't like rural, which isn't a problem for me. I like that. That's a positive in my book. So the next thought is, how much maintenance is the land going to require? Different types of land require different types of maintenance. If it's wooded, very little maintenance goes into woods. They are, a self-maintaining ecosystem generally. You don't really have to do anything other than maybe keep them clear or clear out the parts that you want to walk through. If the land is like pasture land, especially like established pasture land, then that's going to be pretty easy to maintain, as long as you don't have to mow the property. Like if you don't live in an area where they're required for you to mow it, or it's expected of you to mow your pasture land. Where I am at in Virginia, everything here is pasture land, and it's optional whether or not you mow it. People let their grass grow for their animals, so um, you don't have to maintain it if you don't want to. We only maintain maybe an acre of our property, like around where our living area. Some of it is wood, some of it is the majority of it is pasture. And we have two horses, and we let our horses mow our yard for us, or we have a horse and a mule, and they maintain the property around our camper. We don't ever mow anything. We honestly don't really maintain our land at all. It is self maintains itself. And like there is property that is more like brush, where it might look like grass when it's mowed, but it grows up being like weeds, like brushy material. When I had an acre in Tennessee, that yard was all brush. And that 1 acre there was way harder to maintain than our 7 acres here in Virginia, because trees and shrubs and things wanted to grow that we didn't want to grow. Now, there are ways around that. You can work with your land. You can get goats and pigs and mules, donkeys. They will help you clear back some of the unmanageable areas. So you just have to think about the property as an ecosystem. I personally, if it was just me and I was by myself, would not want to mow and keep maintained more than about an acre. If if I had to mow my yard and all that stuff, I didn't have animals or anything like that, like an acre is my max as far as like mowing it. But my goal was to get property that I didn't really have to like super maintain and do a lot of yard work and stuff. Because even in Florida, when we had like a little tiny, teeny tiny yard, there was still way more maintenance that needed to be done to the property than our current property with 7 acres because we've got a system going with our animals and stuff where we are not having to do like any yard work at all other than the garden, which you can decide how big or small your garden is every year. So the next thing is like how much you actually need and could that money be better spent elsewhere? Like even if you can afford 50 acres, do you really need 50 acres or could you buy, 10 acres and spend a lot less money and put that money towards something more beneficial to you? Also think about what you could potentially do with the land in the future. Like if you did get 20 acres, what could you do with the extra acres in the future that like maybe you're just not using right away? Could you maybe put rental property on it and rent it out? Or maybe you can like section off the property in the future and like build a house on it or just sell it off as like a way to make extra money. I think land is a great investment opportunity. So how much you can handle is really, really dependent on what type of land it is, where it's located, what you want to do with it in the future, how you have things set up and running on the property as far as like animals and um, what is required of you in the area, if there's any restrictions or anything like that. So it's super dependent, but I hope that those gave you some ideas. I'll just tell you with my personal experience, we bought 7 acres. It is mostly pasture land. And I think that we could have had more. I think 7 is plenty for us and what we want to do in our goals and stuff. But also, like, 20 acres sounds like a good number, also. We couldn't afford 20 acres. We maxed out our budget with our 7 and, building a house and all the other things we want to do on our property. So, but yeah, I mean, if we had more money or the land was cheaper, then, 20 acres, really 100 acres, like I don't think there's a number too big because I would just choose to maintain and use a small section of it. And you guys let me know down below what your opinion is on how many acres you think one person could handle. Like how many acres you think you could handle if you were able to buy more than you expected. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will talk to you next time.